You know what cuts deeper than a knife? When your own blood tells you you're no longer welcome in their life. That text came in on Christmas Eve from my only son, Titus. We need space from you. Please don't reach out anymore. At all. His wife, Selena, even liked it. That little thumbs up, it burned itself into my mind like a brand. I just stood there, in front of the tree I'd decorated alone, holding a glass of bourbon that suddenly tasted like ash. For 63 years I'd played the part of the provider, the fixer, the man who made sure everyone else slept easy. And this was my reward. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. I remember whispering to myself, all right, son, you want space? I'll give you the whole damn universe. That was the moment everything inside me snapped into focus. The hurt turned to clarity, sharp, surgical. I wasn't going to yell or beg or try to fix it. No, I was going to do something Titus would never forget. Because here's the thing about money and love. When one runs dry, the other shows its true color. So I set my glass down, straightened the sleeve of my sweater, and called my lawyer. He picked up with a lazy, "Merry Christmas, Sanford." I just said, "Not anymore, Rod. We're about to rewrite the holiday script." And that's when it hit me. If they want a life without me, I'd show them exactly what that felt like. Rod arrived the next morning, still smelling of cigars and peppermint schnapps. We sat in my study. Oak panels, old jazz humming from the turntable, the kind of room where decisions have weight. I slid the trust documents across the desk. $25 million. My father's legacy, my life's discipline, and their easy ride. Terminate the distributions, I said. Rod blinked. Sanford, that's everything. The penthouse, the cars, their monthly stipend. Exactly. I cut him off. They wanted space, Rod. Let's give it to them, financially, geographically, spiritually. He leaned back, watching me like I'd lost my mind. But I hadn't. For the first time in years, I found it. Every wire transfer, every credit line, every comfort, all tied to my name. I'd built that life for them brick by brick, and now I was dismantling it, one clause at a time. Rod sighed. You really want to do this? On Christmas? I looked out the window. Snow was falling over the driveway where I used to watch Titus ride his first bike. There's no better day to start a resurrection. He signed. The pen scratched the paper with a sound that felt like thunder in my chest. Years of indulgence, erased in a single motion. I sent one final email before closing my laptop. Effective immediately, all distributions to Titus and Selena Caldwell are terminated. Then I poured another bourbon, watched the snow cover the world outside, and thought, they'll wake up tomorrow to find out what it really means to have nothing. And something told me that's when the real story would begin. The next afternoon, I imagined the scene, Titus and Selena all dressed up for brunch at that overpriced restaurant in Tribeca, the one I'd been funding for years without them even realizing. I could almost see it play out. The waiter handing back their platinum card, that nervous smile, the quiet murmur, "I'm sorry, sir, your payment's been declined." Rod texted me an hour later. "It's done. All accounts frozen." I leaned back in my chair, the fireplace crackling behind me, and for the first time in a long while I smiled. Not out of spite, out of clarity. It wasn't revenge. It was correction. A necessary reset. Later that evening, my phone started buzzing, call after call. Titus first, then Selena. I watched the screen light up again and again, their faces glowing for a few seconds before fading into darkness. I didn't block them. Not yet. I just let the silence do the talking. By midnight, the texts started coming in. "Dad, what's going on? We can't access the account. Please call us." This must be a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message, the kind that doesn't need to be spoken. I turned off the phone, walked out onto the porch, and breathed in the cold December air. The wind carried the faint echo of church bells from town, like a requiem for everything fake that had been between us. Tomorrow, they'd learn what happens when the golden faucet runs dry, and I was ready to watch the first cracks appear. 2 days later, Rod called me laughing. "You're trending in their world, Sanford," he said. Selena's Instagram stories are gone, and Titus just sold his paddock on some resale app. I chuckled. Guess the trust fund lifestyle didn't include an emergency plan. But behind the humor, there was something darker, a quiet satisfaction mixed with sorrow. I never wanted to destroy my son. I wanted him to wake up, to remember who he was before the marble countertops and bottle service blurred his edges. By the end of that week, their penthouse management sent the eviction notice. Fully legal, fully deserved. I had paid that lease for 5 years straight. Not one rent check ever touched their hands. Now it was over. The next morning, I got an email from the leasing office confirming the repossession of Selena's Range Rover. I pictured her standing there on the curb, phone in hand, arguing with a tow truck driver, her voice sharp and panicked. The same woman who liked the message cutting me out of her life. Funny how fast confidence turns to desperation when the floor drops out. I sat in my study, that old Nat King Cole record spinning in the background, and whispered, "Merry Christmas, kids!" Then I raised my glass, not to celebrate, but to mourn, to the death of entitlement, the birth of consequence. They wanted a world without me. Now they finally had one. It was late January when they finally showed up. I heard the gate buzzer before I saw the cameras light up. Titus's face, red from the cold, eyes wild. Selena behind him in that fur coat I bought her last winter. She was yelling something, but all I could hear was the wind. "Dad, open the damn gate," he screamed into the intercom. I didn't move. I just sat there in the garden, a blanket over my legs, Miles Davis playing through the outdoor speakers. The winter sun bounced off the ice fountain, peaceful, almost sacred. They banged on the iron gate for minutes, shouting threats, apologies, and something in between. I could see Selena crying now, mascara streaked like war paint. I thought about the little boy who used to knock on my office door, asking if I wanted to play catch. Somewhere along the line, that boy grew into a stranger who only called when the balance dropped below zero. When the security team arrived, I didn't have to say a word. They knew. 2 men in navy coats walked them back to the car, slow, firm, professional. Titus turned once before leaving, eyes burning with betrayal. I wanted to tell him, "Son, I'm not your enemy. I'm your mirror." But I stayed silent. Some lessons can't be taught through words. As their SUV pulled away, I turned the volume up. "So what?" filled the air, sharp brass cutting to the winter wind. For the first time, my house felt like mine again. And deep down, I knew. This was only the beginning of their reckoning. The calls started again that night. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Every few minutes my phone lit up Titus, Selena, unknown, blocked. I just sat there in the dark, the glow of the screen painting the room in a cold, blue light. Voicemails poured in. The first few were angry. "You can't do this to us." Then came the tears. "Dad, please, we're sorry. We just need help, just until next month." By message 40, the anger was gone. By message 80, they sounded like children again. I didn't delete a single one. I wanted to hear the evolution, pride breaking, ego collapsing, until all that was left was truth. Around the 100th voicemail, Titus said something that caught me off guard. "I know I messed up, Dad. I thought you'd always be there. But you're teaching me something, and I hate how right you are." That one hit different. I paused the playback, staring at the frozen timestamp on the screen. 2:47 a.m. It reminded me of the nights I used to stay up worrying if he'd made it home safe from college parties. The roles had reversed. I turned the phone off and placed it face down on the desk. The silence felt sacred, like a confession had finally been made, even if it wasn't to me directly. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft and relentless. It covered everything, the driveway, the past, the noise. And as I watched it pile higher, I realized redemption doesn't start with forgiveness. It starts with loss. By February, the world had gone quiet again. No more calls, no more messages, just the steady rhythm of my own breathing in a house that finally felt honest. Still, some nights I'd catch myself staring at the old family photo on the mantel. Titus at 12, smiling with a baseball glove too big for his hand. Selena's still just that nice girl from college. Back when things were simple, before money blurred the lines between love and dependency. Rod dropped by one afternoon with coffee and a folder. "You sure you want to stick with this?" he asked. "We could reinstate partial distributions. Ease the blow." I shook my head. "If I fix it now, they'll never fix themselves." He nodded, studying me. "You're colder than I remember." "Not cold," I said. "Clear." After he left, I spent the evening going through old letters, real paper ones, that Titus had written as a kid. Crayon thank yous. Father's Day notes, the kind of things no email could ever replace. Somewhere between those folded pages, I found my purpose again. This wasn't punishment. It was a final lesson, the one I'd failed to teach when it mattered most. As the clock hit midnight, I opened my laptop and began drafting something new, a scholarship fund, for kids like Titus used to be, bright but lost. I'd name it after my late wife, the one who always believed in second chances. And for the first time in months, I felt peace creep back into my chest, slow, cautious, but real. They'd lost their safety net. Now, maybe they could find their footing. But deep down, I knew the storm wasn't over yet. Spring came slow that year, like the world itself was hesitating to thaw. I spent my mornings walking through the garden, pruning the roses my wife once loved. Every cut had purpose. Remove the dead to let the living grow. That was how I saw the trust now. Necessary pruning. Then one morning, Rod called. "They've requested a meeting," he said. I stopped mid-step. "Who?" "Titus and Selena." They came to my office in person. Looked different. Thinner. Worn down. They're asking for a conversation. I didn't answer right away. The wind rustled through the magnolias, and I thought about how silence can turn pride into humility faster than any lecture. "Set it up," I said finally, "but on my terms." Rod exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for months. "You sure about this?" "No," I said, "but I owe the truth a proper ending." The meeting was set for Friday. Same office where I cut them off, same mahogany table, same cold light spilling through the blinds. A perfect stage for reckoning. That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing echoes of that Christmas Eve text. "Please don't reach out anymore at all." Only now, they were the ones reaching. I ironed my shirt at dawn, polished my old cufflinks, and poured a single glass of bourbon. Not to drink, just to remember. As I stared at my reflection in the dark liquid, I whispered, "You wanted a clean break, son. Let's see how clean you can live with it." And for the first time, I wasn't nervous. I was ready. The elevator doors opened with that sterile corporate ding. Rod's office looked exactly as I remembered. Glass walls, polished floors, the smell of expensive paper and quiet judgment. And there they were, Titus and Selena, sitting side by side, holding hands like scared kids in the principal's office. Titus stood when he saw me. He looked older somehow, beard scruffy, eyes heavy, the arrogance gone. "Dad," he started, voice cracking slightly. "Thanks for coming." I just nodded and took my seat. "Let's not waste time." Rod cleared his throat. "They've asked for reconsideration of the trust terms. They claim undue hardship." Selena leaned forward. "We're not asking for charity, Mr. Caldwell. Just a chance to get back on our feet." Mr. Caldwell. That one stung more than I expected. I looked at Titus. "You had every chance, every resource, and you traded gratitude for entitlement. Tell me, what would giving you more teach you now?" He didn't answer. His shoulders slumped, his lips pressed tight. Rod shifted uncomfortably. "Sanford." I raised a hand. "No, this is between us." Silence hung in the room. I could hear the clock ticking, each second heavier than the last. Finally, I slid a folder across the table. Documents for the new scholarship fund. Your names are gone from the trust. Every cent now goes to students who actually want to work for their future. Selena's jaw dropped. Titus stared at the papers, then at me. "You can't just erase us," he whispered. I leaned back, calm as a sermon. "Son, I didn't erase you. You did that all by yourself. And in that moment, for the first time, he didn't argue. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioner and the faint city noise bleeding through the glass. Titus just sat there, staring at the papers like they might suddenly rewrite themselves. Selena's eyes shimmered, not with anger this time, but disbelief, maybe even shame. Rod looked at me as if waiting for me to soften, to extend a hand, to offer some fatherly lifeline. But that part of me, the fixer, the rescuer, had been buried months ago under the snow outside my home. I finally broke the silence. You both mistook generosity for weakness. You thought love was a debit card that never declined. But here's the truth. The moment you start treating love like currency, it goes bankrupt. Titus looked up, his voice small. We were stupid. No, I said quietly. You were comfortable. Selena's tears finally fell. She whispered, I didn't mean to. I know, I said, but you did. I stood to leave, collected my coat, my old leather gloves creaking in my hands. This isn't revenge. It's responsibility. And someday you'll understand the difference. Rod followed me out the hall, his face pale. That was brutal, he muttered. I stopped at the elevator and looked back through glass, at my son, broken and silent. No, I said, that was necessary. The door slid shut between us with a soft chime, and as the elevator descended, I realized something unexpected. The anger was gone. What was left was something quieter. Freedom. 6 months later, the city was alive again. Warm air, jazz drifting from open bars, the smell of rain on concrete. I hadn't seen or heard from Titus since that day in Rod's office. I didn't need to. Some silences are more eloquent than words. That morning, I stood on a small stage at my alma mater, adjusting the microphone as the dean introduced me. Behind me, a banner read, the Margaret Caldwell Scholarship for Resilience and Renewal, my late wife's name. Her dream, finally real. I looked out at the faces of students, wide-eyed, uncertain, hopeful, the kind of kids who remind you the world still has potential. This scholarship, I said, isn't about where you come from. It's about what you do when life stops handing you things. Applause rippled through the hall. But as I spoke, my eyes drifted back to an empty chair, the one I'd secretly hoped Titus might fill. After the ceremony, I lingered in the garden behind the auditorium, the same spot where Margaret and I once walked as students. The fountain murmured softly, the world calm and clean. Rod found me there, holding 2 cups of coffee. You did good, he said. I smiled faintly. Feels less like revenge now, more like repair. He nodded. Funny thing about repair, it always starts with something breaking. We stood there in silence, listening to the laughter of students in the distance. And for the first time since that Christmas Eve, I didn't feel the weight of loss, just balance. That night, I came home to an unusually quiet house. No jazz, no phone buzzing, just the sound of the old refrigerator and the ticking grandfather clock in the hall. I poured myself a drink and stood by the window, watching the city lights shimmer like scattered embers. Then I saw it, my phone lighting up on the table. A single text. Titus, Dad? Just one word. No apology. No excuse. Just, Dad. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen, the reflection of that word dancing across the glass like a ghost. It had been 6 months since he called me anything but Sanford or Sir. 6 months since the silence began to heal us both. The instinct, the old reflex, urged me to reply, to ask if he was okay, if he'd found work, if he'd eaten. But something in me whispered, not yet. I set the phone down, walked to the garden, and sat beside the roses. The night smelled of wet earth and jasmine. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn moaned, low, steady, like a memory refusing to die. I thought about how love doesn't vanish when you draw a line. It just changes shape. He was reaching out, yes. But this time, he had to cross the distance himself. I took a sip of bourbon, leaned back in a chair, and let the silence answer for me. For now. The next morning, the phone was still there, Same message glowing on the screen. Dad? It looked smaller in the daylight, almost fragile. I didn't reply. Instead, I pocketed the phone and went out for my morning walk. The neighborhood was waking up. Sprinklers hissing, dogs barking, the smell of fresh coffee drifting through open doors. Life, steady and indifferent. As I walked past the lake, I saw a man teaching his son to fish. The kid couldn't have been older than 10, his small hands fumbling with the reel. The father didn't scold him, just laughed, patient and calm. For a second, it hit me that used to be us, me and Titus. Saturdays at Lake Monroe, peanut butter sandwiches, and the smell of sunscreen and river water. I stopped, my chest tight, realizing how far we drifted from that innocence. Money, pride, convenience. They built walls higher than love could climb. And yet, that single word in his message had cracked one brick. Just one. Back home, I opened my laptop and checked the scholarship fund account. Dozens of students had already applied. Kids who clawed their way through life without safety nets or trust funds. One essay stood out, a young man who wrote, "Sometimes the people who cut you off are the same ones who set you free." I smiled. Maybe Titus would learn that too. I closed the laptop, glanced at my phone again, the word Dad still waiting. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt possibility. A week passed before I heard from him again. This time, it wasn't a text, it was a letter. A real one. Handwritten. The envelope smudged with rain. No return address, just my name. Sanford Caldwell, written in a shaky hand I hadn't seen since his college days. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at it for a full minute before opening it. The paper trembled slightly in my hands. Dad, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know we're okay. I got a job at a small design firm. Selena's teaching art classes at a community center. It's not much, but it's ours. I didn't understand what you were doing, but now I do. You didn't take everything from me. You gave me back my life. I just didn't see it then. I read it twice, maybe 3 times. Each word felt like a stitch pulling together something that had been torn for years. At the bottom, he'd drawn a small sketch, a tree, roots deep in the ground, branches stretching upward. Underneath, he'd written, "You planted this." My throat tightened. For a long time, I just sat there, the house silent except for the faint of the clock. I folded the letter carefully, slid it into my pocket, and stepped outside. The evening light painted everything gold, the roses, the old oak, the empty chair beside me. And for the first time in a long time, I whispered aloud, "That's my boy." But deep inside, I knew this story wasn't over yet. Not until we faced each other again. It was early December when I finally saw him again. The symmetry of it wasn't lost on me. Almost a year since that Christmas Eve text that started it all. I was walking out of the university auditorium after a scholarship board meeting when I heard someone call my name. Dad. I turned, and there he was, Titus. No designer suit, no bravado, just a man. Plain jacket, callous hands, tired eyes that finally looked honest. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt thick, but not heavy, more like soil ready to grow something new. He smiled faintly. I didn't know if he'd want to see me. I studied him. If I didn't, I wouldn't have turned around. He nodded, looking down at the pavement. "You were right, about everything. I thought you were trying to punish me, but you were freeing me." I said nothing, just listened. That was all he needed. Then he reached into his bag and handed me a small wrap box. "I made this. Thought maybe you'd hang it on the tree." Inside was a wooden ornament, carved by hand. A simple circle with the word grace etched in the center. Rough edges, imperfect lines, but beautiful in its sincerity. I turned it in my hand. The word catching the sunlight. Grace. I murmured, "That's a good start." He smiled, eyes wet. "So, can I come by for Christmas dinner?" I took a long breath, feeling the cold air fill my lungs, then nodded slowly. "Let's see if you remember how to carve the turkey." And just like that, the door cracked open. Christmas Eve again. 1 year to the day since everything fell apart, And somehow, everything came full circle. The house smelled of rosemary and roast. The same jazz record played low in the background. And for the first time in years, there was laughter in the halls. Titus stood by the tree, hanging that wooden ornament he'd carved Grace. The word caught the glow of the lights, soft and golden. Selena was in the kitchen, setting the table, her voice warm and steady. No diamonds, no pretense, just simple joy. When dinner was ready, we sat together, 3 people who'd been strangers, now finding our way back through silence, humility, and something that finally resembled love. Titus raised his glass, eyes meeting mine. To new beginnings, he said. I clinked my glass against his. And to endings that had to happen first. We ate, talked, even laughed. But when the night grew quiet and they left, I stayed behind, looking at the tree, that little ornament swinging gently, catching the light. I thought of the boy who once thought money was love, the man who had to lose everything to understand what it really meant, and the father who finally learned that letting go isn't cruelty, it's courage. I poured one last bourbon, sat by the fire, and whispered to the empty room, "You wanted space, son. I gave you the universe, and somehow you found your way home." Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and forgiving, covering every scar in white. And in that quiet, I realized vengeance was never the ending. It was a beginning of grace. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.